Good morning and welcome to St John's Every Day. I'm Pam Coles and I'm reading from St Paul's letter to the Philippians chapter 2. Others have already spoken about how Jesus laid aside his majesty and came from heaven down to earth in great humility to become as one of us. And in chapter 2 verse 8 it says this, "And being found in appearance as a human being, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." As I concentrated on the verse, I noticed an exclamation mark at the end of cross. And somehow it reminded me that Paul would be dictating this letter to a scribe who would be writing it down. And he would be using a whole range of emotions and emphases as he spoke. In being found in appearance as a human being, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross, he might have said. Both Paul and the Roman soldier to whom he was chained would know the horrors of such a death. For Jews, crucifixion was the most awful death they could imagine. Anybody who was crucified was considered to be cursed. It says so in Galatians 3:13. And for Romans, crucifixion was the appointed death for slaves and the lowest of the low. An actual slave rebellion that's sometimes shown on the film Spartacus resulted in miles of roads lined with crucified slaves. Roman citizens, however, were spared that death, and Paul, as a Roman citizen, would be beheaded instead, though Peter and Andrew, as Jews, suffered the same fate as their master. In St John's Gospel, chapter 10, Jesus said, "No one takes my life from me, but I lay it down of my own accord, and I have the authority to lay it down and to take it up again." That didn't lessen the horrendous impact on body, mind and spirit of the ordeal that he would have, that began with the agony in the garden on the Thursday and ended after 6 hours on a cross on Friday, with all the torture and abuse in between. But he had humbled himself, made a conscious decision to follow God's will. He didn't claim special privileges, but lived a selfless, obedient life and died a selfless, obedient death. Obedience to God's law should be part and parcel of our attitude to life and a conscious decision. But obedience to God's will for our own individual lives means we need to find out what it is in the first place by reading his manual, the Bible, by spending time with God, and then making a conscious decision to follow his will and plan for us obediently. In Jeremiah, God says, "I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." Jesus was obedient and selfless. And selflessness means at least to love our neighbours as ourselves. But at times it calls for real sacrifice, doesn't it? Of time or talents or money. And for some brave souls, for their very lives, exemplified at present by the frontline NHS workers. Jesus said, "Greater love has no man than to lay down his life for his friends," which he did for each one of us. Thank you.